Someone once said that life holds two treasures: freedom of thought and freedom of movement. Yet, even though most of us are born free, how many truly attain genuine freedom? Most people unknowingly shackle themselves with invisible chains, turning life's journey into an endless struggle for liberation. But despite our relentless efforts, why do we fail to truly break free? The main reason lies in three primary types of chains that everyone must confront: shackles we often lack the awareness and courage to decisively cast off at the right moment. If you don't recognize and release them in time, you will remain forever imprisoned, unable to achieve true freedom and happiness. So, what are these three types of chains? The classic novel of Human Bondage by acclaimed English writer William Somerset Maugham will offer profound insights to help you find your own answers. This is a semi-autobiographical work by Maugham. I previously introduced another book by this author, The Moon and Sixpence. The idea for Of Human Bondage was conceived when Maugham was 23, but he didn't complete the manuscript until he was 37. Upon its release, the book was hailed as a work of genius, quickly becoming a classic translated into numerous languages. Shedding the chains of inferiority, about an imperfect self to reconcile with oneself. The protagonist, Philip, lost both parents at the age of 9 and had to live with his uncle and aunt. His uncle's conservative and rigid nature made Philip's childhood full of pressure and sorrow. Worse still, Philip had a congenital clubfoot, causing him to limp. His solitary life and physical defect made him shy, insecure, and sensitive. At school, he was mocked by many classmates. Some deliberately made Philip remove his shoe to get a better look, others mimicked his gait, and some even intentionally kicked his leg. Philip desperately tried to fit in, wanting to live like everyone else, but the harder he tried, the more he was ridiculed. The immense psychological pressure caused Philip's academic performance to decline, and even his teachers cruelly called him a lame idiot. In high school, Philip still couldn't escape the taunts and humiliation from his peers. Gradually, he became psychologically tormented, growing increasingly insecure and withdrawn. His physical imperfection became a thorn in his side. Even as an adult, just hearing the words "lame leg" would make Philip tense up, his face redden, his heart pound, and his hands tremble. In those moments, his heart was filled with hatred and resentment for his own body. When looking for a job, Philip faced many difficulties because of his leg. In love, he felt insecure, believing that any woman would reject him. Many years later, Philip grew up and became a doctor. One day, he attended to a patient, a young boy with a clubfoot. Looking at the boy, Philip saw his younger self, so he was very careful in his communication. But the boy, carefree, smiled and said, "It just doesn't look very nice, but it doesn't affect my life much." A light-hearted remark, like a wisp of cloud, yet it carried the weight of 1,000 pounds, waking Philip up. Indeed, why do the things that others deem beautiful or excellent matter so much to us? Because we have always craved them. But the more you crave beauty and perfection to be accepted by the majority, the more susceptible your psyche becomes to the gazes, words, and actions of others. The more you are affected, the more insecure you become, and the more you crave perfection. This is a vicious cycle. You are trapped in an invisible prison, shackled by your own insecurity. Here, the author uses Philip's physical disability to highlight a truth we must confront. All of us have flaws and imperfections, if not physically, then mentally. As previously discussed in Adler's classic psychology book on inferiority, all of us, to varying degrees, experience an inferiority complex, if not about one thing, then another. We might be insecure about being too fat or too thin, too tall or too short, having crooked teeth, an unattractive face, dark skin, or too many pimples. We might feel inferior due to poor academic performance, a less prestigious job than others, low income, a congenital disability, being LGBTQ+, being a man born in a woman's body, or our family background, and so on. Ultimately, we are all insecure about an imperfect self. When facing insecurity, people typically exhibit two main types of behavior: avoidance and defense. Those who avoid will withdraw and try to steer clear of any situations that might trigger feelings of insecurity or discomfort. They limit participation in social activities, public events, and meetings with friends. This self-isolating behavior restricts personal growth and can sometimes lead to procrastination and indecisiveness. The truth is, the more they isolate themselves, the greater their longing to belong and be like others. And the more they crave, the more insecure they become. Thus, they can never free themselves from the shackles of inferiority. Those with defensive behaviors will react by protecting themselves from feelings of hurt, criticism, or judgment by constantly seeking validation and affirmation from others. For example, they might intentionally expose their flaws to subtly elicit recognition. This is known as a self-deprecating personality. When someone frequently says, "I'm so fat lately," "I'm too short," or "this outfit doesn't look good on me," what they truly want to hear from others is, "No, you're not fat," or "No, you look great in that outfit." But these words only offer fleeting comfort, leaving behind a persistent inferiority complex. Deep down, they know these are merely comforting lies. Yet, even knowing this, they continue to deny themselves. This is nothing short of an internal drama that only brings more suffering. If a person continually rehashes their pain, stubbornly depleting themselves, they will never escape life's chains. The only way to break free from these chains is to stop comparing yourself to others, stop focusing on your own flaws and imperfections, and stop believing that not being perfect is the worst thing. Life's journey is a continuous process of breaking free from chains, but sometimes, awakening only requires a single thought. Just like Philip, after changing his mindset, he suddenly realized that fate had given him a flawed body, but also granted him unique qualities. He said, "If my leg wasn't deformed, I wouldn't have such acute senses." The books he read, the paths he walked, the pains he endured, all made him understand that his disability made life difficult, but it also gave him the ability for deep introspection, allowing him to appreciate the beauty of art and life. From then on, Philip calmly accepted his imperfect self, finally breaking free from the shackles of self-doubt and inferiority, achieving self-reconciliation and redemption. There is a saying, "Flowers not yet in full bloom and the moon not yet full are the most beautiful." For if all flowers bloomed completely, they would inevitably fade. If the moon were always perfectly full, it would surely begin to wane eventually. Nothing in this world is perfect, but it is precisely this, imperfection, that makes you unique in your own way. If we look at others with eyes of comparison, believing they possess things more perfect than us, then when we turn to ourselves, our focus will fall entirely on our own flaws. Thus, it becomes very difficult to see our strengths and unleash our true power. Therefore, only when you personally let go of these chains of self-doubt, strive to positively change what can be changed, naturally and without comparison, focusing on yourself, and accept what you cannot change, will the gazes and judgments of others cease to matter to you. Only then can you truly attain freedom, just like Philip, who could finally walk with serene composure, even with his limp. Leo Tolstoy once said, "All the variety, all the charm, all the beauty of life is made up of light and shadow." When you learn to accept the imperfections of life, that is also when you gain the strength to step out of the shadows and discover your true self-worth. Cast off the chains of misguided perseverance to clearly see the right path. What career should I choose? Is a question everyone must face on life's journey. Philip was no different. His uncle wanted him to follow in his footsteps as a clergyman, while his aunt wanted him to pursue his late father's profession and become a doctor. Philip, though unsure of what he wanted, rejected his aunt and uncle's plans because he detested being both a clergyman and a doctor. Through an acquaintance's recommendation, Philip took an apprenticeship at an accounting office. Soon, the tedious tasks of sitting in front of numbers, adding and subtracting, made him detest the job. Philip had loved drawing since childhood. His friends, seeing his drawings, all believed he had artistic talent. From then on, he nurtured the dream of becoming an artist. He convinced his uncle to support him financially and then, filled with hopeful enthusiasm, went to Paris to study painting. Upon arrival, Philip felt he had found kindred spirits. Every day, people passionately held brushes, drank coffee, and ardently discussed art and life, until he met a girl named Price. Everything began to change. Price was a very diligent and hardworking art student, but after observing her for some time, her teacher realized she lacked talent and frankly advised her to find something more suitable for herself. However, the girl didn't believe her teacher, firmly convinced that with perseverance she could succeed. As a result, none of her paintings sold, poverty piled up, and she eventually despaired and took her own life in her squalid rented room. Price's story profoundly shocked Philip, and for the first time, he began to doubt his own choice. He couldn't help but ask his teacher if he had artistic talent. The teacher didn't answer directly, but told Philip a story. This story is also from Maugham's other famous novel, The Moon and Sixpence. The story is about a stockbroker named Strickland who had a stable career, a prosperous and happy family. But one day, he suddenly abandoned everything and went to Paris alone to pursue his dream of becoming a painter. He said, "I feel like a drowning man, only painting can save me." With boundless passion, Strickland eventually achieved his desire to become a painter and found his own happiness. After hearing the story, Philip suddenly realized that true artists, besides talent, must also possess an incredibly intense passion for what they do. The line between perseverance and stubbornness is not as thin as we think. It only becomes blurred when you are unclear about yourself. This requires us to learn to observe and feel ourselves from the inside out and answer these questions. What do you love to do? Are you good at it? Do you feel joy and happiness while doing it? Are you willing to face all difficulties? Do you consider the gains and losses when choosing to continue? Do you work only to achieve a material goal, like earning a lot of money or gaining fame and high status? Do you have an intense, driving passion for your work? Do you have enough motivation that no one and nothing can stop you from moving forward? If you meet all these conditions, persevere to the end with your choice, like Van Gogh, like Strickland in The Moon and Sixpence asterisk, or like the young shepherd Santiago in asterisk the alchemist asterisk. If not, then be like Philip in this novel and take the time to look at yourself. Philip clearly saw that he did not have an intense passion for painting. After much thought, he decided to give up painting and study medicine in London. Because this was a well-considered decision, Philip studied very diligently throughout his education. Thanks to his continuous efforts, he obtained his medical license. In the process of treating and saving many people, Philip increasingly felt his own worth, becoming more confident and stronger. He now realized that the job truly suited for him was that of a doctor. There is a saying, persevering in a mistake is not a form of courage but foolish stubbornness. On the path of survival and self-discovery, Philip was able to find the field he was truly good at and passionate about, thanks to clear self-awareness and the courage to stop at the right time, shedding the chains of misguided perseverance. This applies to Philip, and it applies to our own lives. If you know you don't have the ability to do a certain job but stubbornly pursue it, you will ultimately achieve nothing. Only when you let go of this stubbornness can you clearly see the right path ahead, do what you are good at, and find yourself deep within your soul, as the famous poet Hermann Hesse said. For each person, the real task is only one, to find himself, and then to hold firm to it in the soul throughout life. # breaking free from chains of misguided relationships, to love oneself and live freely. While studying painting in Paris, Philip fell in love with a restaurant waitress named Mildred. She had an ordinary face and pale skin that gave her a sickly appearance, yet Philip was passionately infatuated with her. Over time, Philip realized that Mildred had shallow thoughts, a cruel, pragmatic, rigid, greedy, vain, deceitful nature, and poor moral character. Every time they went on a date, she would frantically shop, but Philip, despite his financial difficulties, was willing to spend all his money on her. They were not on the same wavelength, didn't have many topics to talk about, making her feel bored. Philip always tried to initiate conversations and cheer her up. Not only that, but Mildred was also promiscuous, involved with many other men. Despite her betrayal and disrespect, Philip found it hard to let go of his feelings. When Mildred became pregnant with another man's child and was abandoned, she returned to him. Philip, without resentment, was willing to stay by her side and raise the child with an even more ardent love. He knew he was merely waiting for a ship to dock at an airport. Even though she didn't love him, he still tried to seek some non-existent affection from her. He hated himself for loving without limits, for demeaning himself so much that the relationship became severely unbalanced, yet he couldn't break free. Sometimes he thought he wasn't good enough for her. He was willing to do anything, believing that sincerity would ultimately lead to true love. But what did he get in the end? All he received was the craving of blind, stubborn desire and repeated deception and humiliation. Later, blinded by materialism, Mildred became a prostitute, contracted a venereal disease, and eventually vanished from Philip's life. Philip, then penniless, was forced to wander the streets. A misguided love had cost him untold pain. As time passed, reflecting on himself, Philip understood that he wasn't actually in love with a specific person, but rather with his own ego, his own desire, and his own stubbornness. As the road less traveled points out, all biological urges and feelings of love driven by a desire for possession or reliance are not true love. Philip's love was intense but blind, fueled by a craving to be loved, like a chain imprisoning his soul. Maugham wrote in the novel that this love was truly a torment. He hated that he had let desire overwhelm him, as if he had become a prisoner, desperately longing for freedom. Later, Philip met Mildred again. He was still willing to help her, but only out of kindness. He also met a like-minded person, and the two married, sharing mutual love. When he truly let go of his obsession and broke free from the bondage of desire in his misguided relationship, Philip finally felt relieved and free. True love is compassion and empathy. It is giving each other freedom, growing together, developing together, and becoming the best versions of ourselves. But love driven by desire, arising from a wish to possess or depend on another, only causes you to drown and erode yourself. By recognizing and casting off these chains in time, we can walk in freedom and truly know how to love ourselves and our partners. There's a famous saying, "Everything has cracks, that's how the light gets in." Life has many ups and downs. Each of us carries our own regrets and imperfections, walking alone. It might be a physical defect, a flaw in our character, career setbacks, or emotional suffering. Dissatisfaction often occupies a large part of life's journey. When you find yourself in such difficult and hazy circumstances, try to calm your mind and read this book. Perhaps you will find the courage to change your destiny. Philip, in this book, uses his tumultuous experiences to tell us that only by truly shedding the chains of self-doubt and inferiority about our imperfections can we fully reconcile with our inner selves, step out of the shadows of insecurity, and transform self-doubt into transcendence. Only by casting off the chains of misguided perseverance in work can you find your passion and discover your true self-worth. Only by breaking free from the chains of misguided relationships can you finally live a fulfilling life and mature in balanced connections. And when those chains are removed, you can truly begin to love yourself, know how to love others, and live a free life. There's a saying, a single thought can make you a demon, a single thought can make you a Buddha. Your destiny will change, all starting from one idea. Have you truly wished to break free from the chains of life and find yourself? Clinging to obsession is a prison that holds you back. Let go of obsession, and everything will be at peace.